Hey everybody, welcome to Purpose People. Today we've got a brilliant company we've done some work for in the past. We've got Karen Davies, the Managing Director, CEO, all-star woman that helps people get started in business where it's seemingly impossible. So welcome, Karen. Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So Karen, your business is incredible in the fact that it gives people a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance. Do you just want to give us an overview of what Purple Shoots is and what it's about?
Okay, so yeah, it's a charity that I set up 10 years ago now to ostensibly to tackle poverty and disadvantage and unemployment, but it's using entrepreneurship. So it's encouraging people who want to start a business but can't get funding from anywhere else, usually because they've got no money to put in or a bad credit score or something that's holding them back.
Yeah.
So we will lend them some money to help them get that business started. And we also work with people who are a little bit further away from starting a business to get them into little collectives to help them overcome maybe other things that maybe around confidence or just deciding what they want to do.
Yeah.
And then help them move in the direction of maybe starting a business or maybe doing something else. The groups have multiple outcomes, but yeah, that the whole sort of idea was to enable people to make the most of themselves. Because once you get stuck behind a bad credit score, you're stuck there forever. If you want to start a business, if you want to be self-employed, you'll find that nobody will help you. And usually the people we meet, what's happened is something historical, and they just can't get it off their record, and that's really frustrating. And it doesn't mean they can't run a business. A lot of people accuse us of taking high risk but the risk really is just that the people who we're helping have got nothing else behind them. So whereas when I started Purple Shoots, I could afford not to have a salary because I had a partner who had one.
Yeah.
And lots of the people that start with us are taking a big risk themselves because they've got nothing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, knowing a little bit about the background of the type of people that you invested in, on top of that, there are other things like criminal records. There could be, situation and circumstances where they've got a blot on their credit score. And you said it could be a default where they're stuck with it for 6 years or whatever else, may have gone even bankrupt at some point and can't get back. So it's really interesting because you're helping people in, I would say, micro communities. Would that be a fair assessment? Where areas because you're based in South Wales?
Yep.
And you're helping businesses that not necessarily like, the hive of activity. They're almost in villages or outposts and giving them the opportunity. Whereas if you were, let's say, in a centre or in a city, there might be some options for you. But even then, you still come up against the same things. If you want a bank, you've got to have these certain things in place. Mm-hmm. So from your perspective, how have you decided to do something like this as opposed to anything else that you could be doing on planet Earth right now? How did you end up doing that?
So yeah, now I'm doing it. I should have done it sooner than I did, but
that's interesting.
Yeah, I always had a bit of a heart for social justice and economic development. I wanted that to happen. Ended up somehow in the financial services industry for quite a long time, and I got frustrated really because I was seeing people with potential who didn't fit the criteria for whichever organisation it was I worked for, and not because they were evil organisations, but because they were driven by profit or they had certain criteria, and these people never hit them. And there was a pattern. It was always the people, at the bottom of the economic pile, as it were, people with no resources, people maybe who hadn't done a business before. Sometimes people new into the UK or new back into the UK, so ex-forces people.
Okay,
they can't get anything. Often new immigrants can't get anything. So lots of people with talent, and I kept having to say no because of my employer. So I knew there was a big untapped resource or potential in the economy. And so, and I suppose the other thing, looking around at my colleagues at the time, they really loved what they were doing. And I thought, I really don't love this, and so I wanted to change that and do something that I believed in. And I suppose at the risk of sounding religious, the other driver was my faith in that I believe that God cares about social justice and cares about the people who are left behind or downtrodden in some way, and expects his people to do something about it. And I think at first I thought I was going to do something in the third world for poverty there. But then I just felt that I should be doing something about what was right in front of me, and so we started in Wales, and now we do England as well.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the thing, right? Like I think for most Christians in that world, they often come to church or part of church, and then there's that aspect of, oh, I want to go and help, and it's like, oh, I've got to go to another country to be able to achieve that, and almost forget that you can actually make an impact where you actually are.
Yeah.
And giving people hope in I guess hopeless situations, and ultimately I think being sort of like or learned or reading a lot about entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs can come from anywhere.
Yeah, they can.
They don't fit this mold, but the criteria to get lending often fits a particular mold, and that's where the gap is, isn't it?
Yeah, and lots of our people don't see themselves as entrepreneurs, and yet they have all the characteristics, risk takers, resilience, and some of them have show incredible resilience, have come through really awful things, maybe a bad marriage breakup or some bereavement or an accident or something that's derailed them and caused a bad credit score.
Yeah.
And then to come back from that and think, right, I'm going to start a business, I think is brave. And especially as often if they're on benefits, they stand to lose a lot in terms of income. And, a new business doesn't really give you much income for a year or two at least. I mean,
no.
Hopefully sooner, but not always.
No, and it's and to be honest, it's the harder route, isn't it? It's high risk, can be high reward, but it's like it's not conventional. It's like, well, let's say you come out of a really tough situation, you'd almost say, well, that's the last thing you want to do is start your own business or whatever. But sometimes that could be the motivator that makes things happen. So you obviously you started a lot in South Wales, and obviously now you're in England and stuff like this. What's the most successful? And I mean, I'm not talking about money, but what's the most successful case you've had? You might not give away their names or their details, so to speak, but can you share a journey where you've seen a transformation, where you look back and you go, I was part of that, and I'm really proud.
Yeah. Well, one of the stories I tell, because it is a great transformation, was a young guy that I won't name him because he was an ex-offender, and he got into prison because he was in a fight. I think he was unlucky to get a custodial sentence, but he got a criminal record. And when he came out, he'd retrained as a painter decorator, but he had zero confidence, and he was pretty sure no one would employ him because he had a criminal record. So he thought self-employment was the only option. But to start with, he didn't even have a driving license. So we gave him a small loan to start with because he was afraid of taking a big one, just so he could pass his test. So, I mean, we didn't really have any hope of repayments then, although he did repay us. And then once he'd done that, he'd built his confidence up a bit. So then he borrowed some more to get a van and some equipment, and he started. And his community actually were quite supportive. He got work, even though they knew him.
Yeah.
And he had another loan 2 or 3 years later, because now he has a team, and
wow.
And he's doing really well. So that's a great transformation, because when I first met him, he felt really hopeless, and now he's a real entrepreneur with employees and everything. That's a good story.
From a Purple Sheep's perspective, I think on top of maybe the lending, the micro loans that they might need, you also give them confidence that someone's believing in them. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of them say that thank you for believing in me. And I think because they've had so many knockbacks, they've at this level, when you only want a very small loan, you very rarely get to speak to anyone if you go to the larger lenders, because it's expensive. So they do it all through algorithms, and the algorithms always kick them out. Yeah. And so they by the time they come to us, their confidence has taken quite a big knock, and they're almost not expecting us to lend them the money. And they all say, thank you for believing in me.
So if you're lending to them, which is different from the algorithms, what's the criteria? What's the process? So there might be people listening today that just think, I'm going to listen to this because I'm quite interested in purpose, but there's a lot of barriers. So what would you say to someone, or what would be the process if they come to you?
So there is a process, and we're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So there are things we have to do. Yeah. So we do have to do a credit check, and we do look at their finances and everything. it's really, but the criteria is really, is this business going to work?
Yeah.
And is this person going to be able to do it? And so it's a judgment. And so it's very personal. So pre-COVID, we met everybody, but during COVID, we couldn't do that. And we started doing it, speaking to people on the phone or on, Zoom or one of those things. And that seemed to work just as well. I think as long as you have a conversation and you get to understand where they're coming from, and the conversation is really to check, because if there is a gap and there's something that they haven't thought about or can't do, they can do something about it and come back, or we can help them with it. So it's a bit of a journey together to get to the point of a loan. But often they don't need that. Often they're ready, and it's just a matter of talking to them, checking that the business is really going to work. That they haven't, they're not trying to start a cafe in a village with 20 people in it. That sort of thing.
So you're checking the robustness of their plan, let's say.
Yeah, and making sure that it looks like it's going to deliver them the income that they hope it will, or that at least there's a chance that it will.
So when people come to you, then is it that they've got an idea and they've just had a lot of rejection in terms of getting it off the ground? Is that pretty much where they are, or do they come out of the small groups that you talked about, the small development groups where people are exploring ideas together? How does it?
So most of them come as individuals. I thought when I started Purple Shoots that lots of them would come out of the groups.
Yeah.
But actually what's happened in the groups is when people, because the groups, we encourage them to sort of test trade or do little enterprising things and to save money. When anyone in a group wants to start a business, they often have saved some money and they don't need to borrow.
Yeah.
We have done one or two, but not many. So most people come to us, often referred to us from well, it used to be from the people working with the DWP, but that seems to have changed. So I'm slightly worried about that, because there are fewer coming through from that source, which might mean that people are falling through gaps. I think there's less. There used to be a support network for people on unemployment benefit if they wanted to go into self-employment. That seems to be less now. So it might mean that people come to us less prepared, and then we'll help them think through the business a bit more and make sure they've thought of everything. How are they going to market it? Who are their customers?
Step, isn't it? The big step is when they start going for it and or start earning more money than they would, then it does have a knock-on effect with the benefits, because people can get caught in the benefits trap. Whereby, well, they want to grow this business, but only to a point, because if they go over to a point, now it's they haven't got that.
Yeah, well, the benefits
income
system frustrates me because it messes them up often. Because the thing that really annoys me is if you go into self-employment and you're on benefits, you have to report monthly they say it's your earnings, but it isn't. It's your profit. If you look at the form they have to fill in, it's what's your income this month and what's your outgoings, and the difference is what they use to knock off the benefits, and that's not earnings, that's profit.
Yeah.
So then the next month there's nothing to go to reinvest in stock, or maybe there's a big bill due. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Wow.
So we're trying to change that, lobbying to try to change that, because I just think it's a failure in understanding of DWP people. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to try to help people so that they can put more of their expenses against it somehow, so that it doesn't show a profit. But it's ridiculous right from the word go. In fact, and then after a certain length of time, there's a sort of an expectation that they will be earning this amount of money. So again, the benefits are reduced. So that causes a problem at that point as well.
Yeah.
So that's why I think people are brave when they start a business, because they've got to overcome all that.
And particularly at that end of the scale as well, because they probably know quite a lot of people that just living off that system. And probably will never change it, or your second or third generation benefits people, whereby they're almost trapped. Because I think that's the tension. I think there must be a very small percentage of people that just enjoy the benefits and got no intention. I think probably the closest to the truth for me is that there are people just trapped in it, where they go, well, if I work too hard now, I'm going to lose that income. So they're almost trapped in the middle of, well, I don't want to earn this much because I'll lose this much benefit.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if you're on any of the disability ones, so we have funded quite a lot of people with disabilities to start a business, but they can keep the benefits if it's PIP, personal independence payments, but it sometimes triggers the the DWP to review it, and they stop it whilst it's reviewed. So so I've had one of our clients who's doing really well, contact us. Oh, they're reviewing my PIP again. They've stopped it. I can't pay you for 2 months, whilst they're reviewing. Wow. Which is ridiculous. So I don't want this to put people off though, because most people overcome all this. But it is annoying.
But that's why you're there, and I think the reason why we're bringing it to light is because these are the objections for them not to try.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is say, look, yes, we know that those things are there, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because we've got a track record, as in Purple Sheets have got a track record of coming through for people and getting beyond and out of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's my thing. It's the same thing when someone's got a really bad leg, or just use an example, really bad leg. They got mobility, and then they finally get a thing where they can do an operation, which means they're going to be pretty much back to normal. And then they choose not to have the operation because they want the mobility payments for their car. Because people get trapped. And that's my thing, is that, you can get trapped in it. But the bravery and the brave part, and I think this is what you do as an organisation, which is really helpful, is you give them the support and the courage to say, but if we do it the right way, this would be in the rearview mirror, because where you're going and where you're headed, build teams, build businesses, and sustainably, obviously, that shows people there is a way out, and sometimes it's a way out of a generational thing as well, because they're almost pushing back the previous generation that settled for it, and they're trying to break out of this space. So I love what you do. I think it's really cool. It's just like a really, it's like entrepreneurship at a micro level, but it's an entrepreneurship that's not talked about enough. The banks don't talk about it. They're always looking for, you could argue, middle-class people and leave it at that. And if they don't fit that, then they're not interested. And yet you are saying, well, entrepreneurs can come from anywhere, an idea can come from anywhere, but if I can find the people, I can believe in them, and they could be tomorrow's success story.
Yeah. And often the local people know what the local areas need. Yeah. And so the businesses they start are responding to that, whereas people coming in from the outside are never quite sure. There was one story where a guy wanted to start a little grocer's shop, and the other funder said, oh yeah, but Sainsbury's is 5 miles down the road. But this guy knew that people didn't travel, didn't have cars, and that his shop would work, and it did. But he knew better than the other funders. So. Yeah,
it's amazing. So typically, what's the sort of level of lending that's involved? Obviously these are micro businesses, so we're not, you can correct me wrong, but you're not talking like 6 figures, 7 figures, or anything like that. You're talking about enough to get going type loans, aren't you?
Yeah. So at the moment, the maximum is 5,000. Yeah. It used to be 3, but that was when we started 10 years ago, and 3,000 isn't enough anymore.
No, with inflation.
No, and actually, we might have to rethink it again. Now we've gone into England, because interestingly, it costs more in England to start a business than it does in Wales. A bit more. But 5,000 is more or less the cap. But that is enough for somebody to, pay the rent on a building and open a shop, or buy the stock, or get a vehicle and be a mobile hairdresser or something like that. It's enough for a little business to get off the ground. And
so the businesses, what are the sort of types of businesses that you work with generally? Is it really diverse, or is it more trades based?
It's a big mix. I mean, there are a lot of what you call tradespeople, so painters and decorators, gardeners, plasterers, plumbers. Actually, not so many plumbers. I think they manage on their own. Builders, all sorts of people like that. Things that I class as sort of personal services, so things like barbers, hairdressers, beauty therapists, childminders, nurseries, dog groomers, things like that. And then sort of more unusual ones, a few sort of, I don't know what you call them, sort of things around well-being counsellors. We've done quite a few sort of crafty ones, which you would think wouldn't work and have. So wood turners, glass jewellery people, silversmiths, or those sort of local crafty types, which is interesting. One farmer, not many in agriculture. There is quite a big range.
So we work with an insurance company called Cre8ion Insurance. They're a great team. And Naomi, if you're there, we will get you on the podcast eventually. But Cre8ion Insurance, they specialise in insurance for small businesses. So there might be a connection between you and them.
That sounds interesting.
They literally are the country's only specialist insurers for craft businesses.
That sounds good, because our groups, when they come through, a lot of them also do make stuff that they want to sell. And for a while it's covered by our insurance, but eventually they want their own so that they can sort of book their own places and so on. And that would be interesting to know.
They're really cool. I mean, we work with them regularly anyway, because we do a lot of content for them, and we've done Facebook challenges and teaching them how to get online and stuff like that. So it's a great community and a great space. But often when someone wants to set up a business, certainly a micro business, there are a lot of people that do crafts. That's almost like that first side hustle or whatever.
It is, yeah.
They're quite well schooled in that. And I think their issue was, and this is again though in the industry, they realised that at the time, a lot of the units that they had, they couldn't keep up when they shut down all the footfall. And so they were like, oh, well, we want to go online, but we don't know how. So we put this challenge on that gave them 5 days of education, how to choose a platform, how to write content, how to do social media, how to deal with illegals like the returns and stuff like that, and how to take a decent photo. And it just helped them. And the upsell at the end of it was how to be insured properly. And that's where they come in. And, it went really, really well. And so it's just about knowing the industry and knowing that world, because it is different, isn't it? It's the smaller businesses.
I mean, lots of ours surprise us with that they aren't very confident online. Even the younger people, it's surprising, and part of that is because they haven't got the money for proper digital connectivity. But the rest is I don't know. So the surprising number of people when we first meet them are struggling to even send an email, which we have to get past that, because they can't really operate without that. No.
So as much as it is about the lending and that, there is a lot, it seems, about educating people how to run businesses and stuff. So do you do a lot of stuff around the education as an extra support? Do like, for instance, if they don't know how to send emails, do you get involved? Do they learn that sort of stuff in a small group, or how does that work?
So we've tried all sorts of things to help. So we fundamentally, if they contact us, we'll find someone to help them. We've got a few volunteer people with different specialisms who can help them. And then we've tried a few sort of sessions, but because everyone's very scattered, especially in South Wales, it's very hard to get people physically to come together. So we're still sort of experimenting with different ways of doing that to get more support. We also started about a year ago what we are calling well-being calls, which is really to, after 2 or 3 months, to phone them up and see if they're okay, and if they need, and if there's anything they need. Because often, I think maybe our society, or maybe it's to do with all the programs you see about entrepreneurship, it gives you the impression that you should be able to manage on your own. And so if something goes wrong, I always tell them something will go wrong when they get the loan. I says, that's a lovely business plan. It won't happen like that. It's something will go wrong. Don't panic. But often they do. And if we can catch them before they panic and help them through it, that's a good thing. That sort of maximizes their chance of success. So we're trying to do that. And then that might uncover a need for something. And then we can find someone to help them.
Yeah, I think for me, what we saw within the craft community, we created a Facebook group. And so they were all in the Facebook group, and they all started integrating and talking to one another. So someone would go, oh, do you know this? And then 6 people would write and go, yeah, I know this, or signpost as well. And that really helped through the pandemic, because I think they even met on a Friday, like at a pub, and they had an online pub where they all went on Zoom and they were having their end of work drinks, but in a crowd, because sometimes being that, the founder or the CEO or startup company, it is lonely, because they, particularly in their instance, where the people around them are playing it safe, so to speak, and they're almost trying to break rank, but they don't know who else is doing that to engage with. So true. I think you've got a big role to play in that, to say, look, here's a couple of other people. Maybe, as you said, you're phoning up, maybe bringing them together on Zoom once a month and have an hour call and say, look, how can we help? And you do 1 hour, but you've got all those people feeding back to you as well. So it's I think the thing that stands out for me is these people are being brave, because they're having to push back the expectations, the past, the perceptions, in order to break free of where they find themselves, and particularly in the areas, like South Wales and stuff like that, with a lot of the poverty that is there. You know,
Yeah.
where in Wales is the poorest area in South Wales?
I think technically there's one little ward in Cardiff, surprisingly. There's one in Caerphilly, and there's one in Rhondda and Taff. So those are the three, I think. There could also be one in the north, in Denbighshire somewhere, I think. But I know because some of the data that we collect is their ranking on the index of multiple deprivation, partly because we have this. One of the ways we raise money is through a tax relief scheme called Community Investment Tax Relief, which encourages sort of wealthier people to lend us money because they get a good tax relief on it. But we have to prove annually that we're lending in deprived areas. So that's the way we track it. And I know that there's one area around the country which is number 4 in the ranking, or so one is the worst. So there's just little pockets. But they're people. It doesn't have to be the location for the tax relief thing. It's the individual as well. So if it's a person who they count as deprived, I hate labels, but deprived in some way. So somebody who is out of work or struggling in some way, then that counts.
So in terms of some people, some cynics, some skeptics might say, "Oh yeah, but you're obviously lending low amounts of money at exorbitant high interest rates." Is that the case, or is it not? No,
it isn't. No, we don't. Obviously, we're higher than a bank would be, but our APR is 25% at the moment. On small amounts of money in cash terms, that's not huge. I mean, the alternatives for these individuals is over 100% or more, if they can get it at all. Yeah. So we're way under that. I mean, that's partly why we're a charity, because that level of interest doesn't cover what it costs us to do it.
Correct,
so we have to raise money to kind of fill the hole. But we want to give people the maximum chance of the business succeeding. We've kept it at that level. Nobody's ever really queried it. I think middle class people think that's a lot, but people, if you're struggling to borrow money from anywhere, that's really cheap.
Yeah, and particularly if you've got an idea that you can believe in. And again, it's about risk reward, right? You just factor that into your costs and then and cover it that way. So in terms of money and lending, I mean, I know that you've got like a network of businesses that over the years have supported you, as in providing you finance and stuff. What would you say to a business owner or an entrepreneur that's looking to be the supply, so to speak? How would they get in touch with you in that score?
So we've got our website has a contact us section, so they can contact us. It depends what they want to do. I mean, I will always respond personally. We have got a couple of businesses that give us money from their profits. A little bit, whatever profits they make, they give us a proportion, which is great. Yeah. There is the tax relief scheme if they want their money back. I mean, there's a risk, but they can lend us the money. Yeah. I mean, and also there is the sort of in kind if they've got. People who would be prepared to be some sort of specialist, if it's an accountant's firm who would be prepared to help people with their books, or if it's a social media firm, that help people, who maybe have staff that would be prepared to give some of their time to help one of our people.
So basically, you're open for partnerships. You're open for people to invest, but not just their treasure. It's their time and their talent as well to undergird what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Do you you've recently, and it's probably not so recent now, but you've got an HQ now, haven't you?
We have. Yeah, we have got. Yeah, we do.
Where is that?
So it's in Pontypridd. Yeah. So it came up for rent. We were hot desking in a church, as you know.
Yeah.
But because we're a bigger team than when we started, and we've got stuff. We've got, because of the groups we run, we've got all sorts of equipment and things, and it was all in people's houses, and it was a bit of a muddle. And this building came up, and it had a shop frontage as well as space upstairs, and so it was a good opportunity to showcase some of the stuff that our people make. So we've got a shop, and so in the shop is stuff that the groups make, and also the borrowers that make stuff, they can put stuff in the shop as well. So it's an outlet, but we don't make money from it we haven't set it up as a money-making shop, but it's meant to be, well, it might, hopefully will make money for the people who put the stuff in, but it doesn't really make any money for us. But we needed a base, really.
Yeah, but it's a platform, isn't it, to help launch people and get them out there.
I mean, we wouldn't, when we have team meetings, we have to go somewhere else. But but we don't, obviously people don't sit in there, and our team is very spread, because certainly the people that work with groups, they need to be local. So, there's somebody in Swansea and there's somebody in the West Country, because they're building the connections in their different areas. So
in terms of, obviously, we talked about businesses obviously giving money and their time and their talent and their treasure. What about a small development groups? Are there opportunities there for people to get involved and volunteer?
Yeah, so there are. What we've been trying to do, or what we have, no, not trying, we have been doing is building up the groups with partners. So we've done a few successful partnerships with churches, where we've started a group with a church, and so a few people within the church have joined in, and then they've got the hang of how to do it. And then the idea is that we can sort of move away, and then they can start more if they want to, and grow the movement that way, and also support the existing group if they need it. So we've done that with churches. We've also done it with housing associations who are interested in us working with their tenants to sort of help them make positive steps forward. So we're open to doing that with other organisations. We've worked also with social services, where they maybe start a group for something, and then it's a finite thing. It's an 8 weeks course on something, and then but then the group wants to carry on, and then they don't know what to do with them. Wow. So then we can come in and help that group become a self-sustaining group, and support them until they don't need us anymore. So if people wanted to get involved with that, we're keen on finding partners who'd like to do it with us. So
is a lot of this on your website?
Yeah. Most of it's on our website.
Which is purpleshoots.org, isn't it?
It is, You should know that since you did it.
So purpleshoots.org if you want to get involved. The thing that intrigues me in terms of what you do is just the impact that you are making with people. You're almost like the unsung hero behind the scenes that is supporting and undergirding them and stuff. And, we know that you've put in an extensive amount of work to just bring this to the government's attention, that the lending criteria is unfair in a sense in certain circumstances. And, to see the success of some of those people, where they've gone, where they've been and where they are now has been absolutely phenomenal. What would you say to someone now that's listening to this and saying, okay, I'm ready to take the risk? What would you say? What would you do? How would they go about it?
Well, they can just get in touch with us. There is a little form on our website they can fill in, or they can ring us. Yeah. And me or one of the others will talk to them. And we try to make it as non-intimidating as possible and as friendly.
Just making that step can be scary.
And even if people aren't sure, I mean, one lady came and she really didn't think her business would work, but she she made a bit of a start, and it's absolutely rocking and rolling now.
Wow.
But we had an initial chat, and then she went away, and then she came back. So we don't mind if people just want to talk and then go away and think about it, or if they change their minds and don't want to do it. I mean, we never push anybody, because you've got to be sure you want to do this. Yeah. But we'll give them all the encouragement that they want, and it is a friendly face. They'll get somebody nice.
Tell us a little bit about your team as well, because obviously I know Bob as well, and he's been instrumental behind the scenes as well. So just tell us a little bit about some of your team that work alongside you to achieve.
So on the lending side, we've got Mike and Owain and Stuart and Richard. Mm-hmm. And Richard's based in Yorkshire, and Stuart's in the West Country. Mike is also in the West Country, but he covers the West Country and Wales, and Owain is in North Wales, and then there's me. So there's
quite a team.
There's a team. So and we're quite a mix of people, but very approachable. I think all of the guys are really nice. Yeah. I mean, I think to do this, you need someone who understands sort of money and figures, but more somebody who understands people and and helps them feel relaxed. So then on the group side, Emma is my like the sort of the second in command of Purple Shoots, and she runs all that side of things. Okay. And we've got a number of part-time people based in different locations supporting the groups.
Yeah.
So.
No, so quite a big support team to help people get to where they need to get to.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the government now? Let's say Rishi's sat here. What would you say to him about helping these people? What do you think is the biggest change that needs to happen?
So there's I think I'm allowed three. So
Yeah,
one,
go for it.
so one is an attitude change. They need to value these little businesses because they don't. I don't think they understand the economic value as well as the sort of community value of these little businesses located in communities. So they need a switch of attitude and to stop thinking about big business and start thinking about the really little ones and recognizing that. And then there's a couple of changes in their processes they could make. So at the moment, there's a thing called a loan guarantee that all the big banks and lenders can get, which basically, very simply, the government will pay out on loans that are lost. So all the big banks benefit from this. It's supposed to encourage them to take bigger risks, which I'm sure it does. Yeah. But if you lend less than 25,000, you can't get it. Okay. So we can't get it. And so we would benefit from that at all. And what it does for the banks and the other lenders is it enables them to borrow money, and it holds us back because obviously they've got their risk covered and we haven't. Yeah. So and then the other thing is in America there's an act whose name I've forgotten, something like the Community Regeneration Act, but it again, oversimplifying it, makes the large financial institutions give money to the smaller ones. So in America, there's loads more Purple Shoots type organizations because they're supported in that way. So they can afford to not charge as much interest like we don't, and to lend to people who are high risk because they've got some underpinning which allows them to borrow money properly.
So with that in mind, do you think that internationally, like certainly with the US and people like, there's opportunity for Purple Shoots in the future to build some global links as they're helping local people? That
would be nice. It's funny, the UK is one of the few countries that doesn't support microfinance. Wow. In Europe, in the EU, it is supported. Yeah. And obviously in the States it is. And in Australia it is.
But not the UK.
And actually the things I've just mentioned wouldn't really cost the government very much.
No. No, because the amounts that you're lending are so small anyway. Yes. And the pockets you're lending to are quite niche in a sense. So, and
what we're losing in comparison is tiny. It's what we write off in a year is one big bank loan lost, or actually one small bank loan lost. Yeah. So it's just peanuts in the government's terms. Wow. And yet the impact would be huge.
Cool. So is there anything else you can think of that, for somebody out there that's thinking to start a business, or that you could give them that last little push?
I think running your own business is about holding your nerve. Yeah. And I think it feels crazy at times. So I think to ignore those feelings and just to start, and yeah.
Resilience and holding your nerve.
Yeah, that's all part of it, and just not trying not to be fazed by things going wrong, because they always do, and there's always a way round.
So how long's Purple Shoots been running?
10 years.
10 years?
10 years. So we're having a birthday party in July. No, it's in October. The birthday's in July, but the party's in
incredible.
October.
Well done. 10 years. Wow, that's incredible.
Yes, actually, because when we started, some finance person said, met with me and said, we'll meet again in 6 months if you're still here. So I'd like to...
Yeah, that's a good thing to celebrate. Yeah. So how would you like to be remembered? Do you look back, say you do another 20, 25 years and you sit back and what would you like to be remembered for in the space? What would you...
I suppose I would like Purple Shoots to be the catalyst that changes things, that changes attitudes to people who are struggling and changes the system so that they have a proper chance at success, the same as everybody else.
Yeah, so you level the playing field and give people opportunity. And you know what? You might be talking to the next Mark Zuckerberg or whoever else somewhere in the valleys in Wales that have got an amazing idea but just never had the chance to express it. So, Karen, thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, once it's live, we'll get the message out there and encourage people. But, we love working with Purple Shoots. It's been a great journey. Great cause. It's not talked about enough within entrepreneur circles. And so thanks so much for your time.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. You can follow us online. You can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can follow us on Apple, Google, Amazon, and Spotify. And if you see any clips on our Reels, which is on Instagram or Facebook, or even on TikTok, please give it a like, please give it a share, and please tell your friends. We'd love for you to take part in the Purpose People questionnaire that is also through our website at Cre8ion.co.uk. And hopefully you can find yourself living the life on purpose.